Okay, and here we are. Welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, movie critic from movieswithmark.com. And we are currently into September now, so we're getting closer into award season here. So we're just about getting to the bigger films, but we got a few pretty good ones here today. We've got The Long Walk, a new thriller based on the Stephen King novel. We've got Highest to Lowest, a Spike Lee film based on an Akira Kurosawa film, High and Low, which you might be able to see on my shelf over there. And we'll also review Tim Robinson's the new Tim Robinson film, Friendship. It's technically not new. It came out earlier this year, but it's currently playing on HBO Max. So I thought we'd get to reviewing that today. So yeah, three big films to talk about here. There's a lot of movies we've got coming up this year. Like I was going over the list of what I want to cover, and there's way too much. There's Paul Thomas Anderson movie. There's a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. There's a Luca Guadagnino film. There's we got another Avatar. We've got so much coming up. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies as they come out, be sure to like this video so others know about The Long Walk. It's coming out this weekend, as well as Highest to Lowest, which just premiered on Apple TV Plus this week. But also subscribe so that you can stay up to date on the latest movies when award season hits, and we've got like a huge tsunami. Like I know typically I do about three movie reviews a stream, but trust me, in award season it's gonna be more like 5 to 6 reviews because it's gonna get high up there. All right, so yeah, let me get the. Oh, I just realized I didn't make any of the credits here. Well, while I'm getting the titles up here, I'll let hopefully this will load here. Usually I fix these before we get into it. While I'm working on this, I'll be sure to tell everyone about the Patreon. We got a few new patrons after the recent PragerU video. But if you'd like to subscribe on the Patreon, you will get access to my movie history books as well as early videos and some exclusive videos. Like I posted a preview of that Saberspark video before I had finished editing everything. Like I just had the opening up there, so that cool little tribute to Heavy Traffic, a whole bunch of patrons got to see that early. So if you want to see cool stuff like that, check out the Patreon. And also get books. It's not just videos. You'll get physical stuff with it. All right, so without further ado, let's get to Stephen King's. Well, based on Stephen King didn't write screenplay, you know. Okay, so we'll get to The Long Walk here. Let me get my notes up. Make sure that's in the right area so I can still see camera there. Okay. So here we go. All right. Here we go with The Long Walk in 3, 2, 1. So The Long Walk is based on a novel by Stephen King in which a group of teenage boys are expected to walk until there's only one of them left. Now, this is set in a dystopian environment, but what I love so much about the way that this film is set up by director Francis Lawrence, who's kind of used to working on dystopian stuff. Like he's worked on a bunch of the Hunger Games films. But I love the way that the story just kind of reveals itself. It immediately gets right into the concept of the walk. You assemble all these boys together. They get to know each other a little bit before, they're informed by the cruel major, perfectly played by Mark Hamill, who's got that gruff voice, and tells them that, look, you gotta compete in this walk. It's voluntary, but you gotta compete in it if you want to prove that, that America's not lazy, that you're going to be able to put yourself on the line. It's we didn't force you to, but this is kind of the only way you're going to be able to get money and basically get whatever you want. So we get to know a bunch of the young players here. We get to know Raymond Garrity, played by Cooper Hoffman, who, we get to know him the most because we get to see his mom dropping him off, and we get a little bit more of his background. So we start to, identify with him a lot more. But we also get Peter McGreeves, who we feel he's kind of weathered this world a lot more based on the scars that he's got on his face. So immediately we know that he's a little bit wiser about like the current this current setting, which they don't. I love the fact that they don't just dump the exposition. Like it's progressively like shown to you as the walk starts, so you just kind of like it. The film pretty much just like hits the ground running, and then just like kind of like gently kind of like expands on both the concept of the walk and the world that's been created around it, that's basically become a dystopian America. So there's lots of great little clues to how these characters are set up, and there's a few characters who seem pretty simple, but there's like a few twists to them. Like we're introduced like Stebbins, who's played by Garrett Waring, who you assume he's kind of like the strongest person there, but you're kind of like waiting for something to take him down. You have Tut Nyot, who is Arthur Baker, who seems like he's a little bit more used to this world as well, given his kind of like cocky nature. And then you have Charlie Plummer playing Gary, who's very much like a bully, but I love the fact that there's a great setup with him. Like you assume like, okay, this is kind of going to be like the bully who's going to, intentionally make other people fail, and you're kind of like rooting for him to lose. But I love how the moment when he starts doing that, it psychologically damages him. So there's a lot of great like aspects to this film of just revealing a little bit more about these characters as they go, and they don't become like so simplistic. Like there's a few you think right off the bat, like Hank, played by Ben Wang, who's kind of like the little scrappy Asian character. He's got a good mouth on him, and he's kind of like, in this for the long haul, but there's a little bit more to him that gets revealed. Like you kind of get to like see like his mind deteriorate. And with a lot of the boys, you do see that as the walk goes over like miles and miles and miles, you start to see that kind of like wear and tear, not just on their bodies, but on their minds as well. Now, I know that, like, initially the draw for a film like this is just to see, like with any, like, dystopian game, is like, who's going to win? And I get the feeling that a lot of people are just going to, like, look at the trailer and they're just going to be like, oh, okay, I know who's going to live and I know who's going to die. I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, you probably won't. But also, that's not the point of the film. The point isn't to see who's going to win. The point is to see, how they're going to die. Because, like, we're told right from the start, only one person is going to be left when they're done here, and a lot of boys are going to end up dying here. So it's not a question of, like, who is going to die, it's a question of how they're going to die. And it is brutal. Like, sure, like, if these boys slow down, they're shot. Like, it's not explicitly stated, it's kind of implied, and the moment that it happens, like, it's a shock. It's a shock to, like, the audience who might not be aware of the concept. Like, for the audience member who goes into this movie cold, they're going to be horrified. Like, cause like they initially, like they use like specific language for the walk where they say like, if you slow down, then, you're out of the race. But what they don't tell you is that when you're out of the race, you're dead. You get shot to death. But the moment that it happens, like the first gunshot is brutal. Like there's the anticipation leading up to it where the soldier is just taking aim, and you see the boy crying, like he knows that his time is up, he's done for, and then the gunshot hits, his jaw dislocates, and it's just like the sound and the sight and everything, it's like a lightning bolt to your soul. And I love the exchange right after that, which is one of the boys says, well, yeah, sure, it's the first death, but, as you go along on the walk, you'll get used to it. And one of the boys remarks, I hope I never get used to it. And that's my same feeling as well. I didn't want to get used to, that death where, it got to the point where it kind of numbed you, where you didn't care about it. And it doesn't. Like, every time, and it's not just because we get to know these characters, like, in the early parts of the race, in the very early parts of the race, you expect a few to get picked off that you don't know that much about. But even still, just like the way the anticipation, the build-up, and just the bloody and gruesome details, it hits you hard. And the more that it goes along, the more you get to know a lot of these characters and the way that they get obliterated. Because it's not just as simple as getting shot. Some of them will almost kind of like beg to be shot. Some of them will try to fight back. Some of them will get one bullet. Some will get multiple bullets. Some will just like bleed out as a way to just, make it sting a lot more for the people who have to keep walking. And some, one in particular just gets run over, and it is gruesome. It's bloody. It's horrifying, and you never get used to it. Every single moment there's that build up, that anticipation that someone is going to die, and you never get used to it. It's so anxiety inducing, especially like, oh my god, the scene where they have to go uphill because they have to maintain a certain speed, and when they're going uphill, when you're starting to get tired, that's when it really becomes intense. Like it's generally anxiety inducing. And I've seen a lot of horror films that really did put me on edge, but this was like throughout. I was just, gripping my seat hard. But like, I love very much the ethos of this film that's kind of like delivered by the fairly like wise Peter McGreaves, who just states that, look, I'm not thinking so much about, the bodies behind me or the other dead players who are going to be further up the road here. All that kind of matters right now is just this moment and getting to the next moment, which is kind of, kind of like a way to go through life. It's just, you need to appreciate the time you have and just make the most of it. And it's not a way of like giving up. It's just kind of trying to find a way to keep living. But what I love so much about the way that it keeps revealing a little bit more about these characters is that they start to realize just how screwed up a system they are in this very moment, where they realize, this walk, it's voluntary, but not really, because we're all struggling for money and we all like want one wish that's going to like satisfy our purpose in life. So it's not really voluntary. Like, you're forced into it. It's basically these kids discovering like the hideous and decaying nature of capitalism and how fascism can easily slip in there. Because the more that gets revealed about this world, you start realizing the more grotesque elements about how like they've essentially like banned culture, which becomes a part of a reason that Raymond has kind of like entered this competition for revenge. So not everybody, and I think they make it pretty clear the more that they go along in this walk, is that it's not just about money. It's about like a purpose and trying to find something more to life than what just like the government has set up for these unlucky kids. And in addition to that, I love the way that just all the little details about the walk are revealed. Like at one point, you see Raymond early on drinking from his canteen. And I thought, okay, do they all have like a set amount of water? Do they kind of have to like ration it and risk being dehydrated? And then that question was kind of answered like, oh, he holds up his canteen and then the soldier will instantly replace it for him. But then it made me wonder, like, well, wait a minute, what happens if they have to go to the bathroom, and then that question is immediately answered in the grossest way possible. So yeah, this film gets pretty brutal and blunt at times, but also just the dialogue between the boys is so so intoxicating. Like there's a natural charm and presence to the kids that I think like allows that more like emotional state in them when like they're dying or they're fearful or they've just become like nihilistic, where they realize they've lost all hope. You really start feeling for them, and just their reactions are so believable that I think it makes like the deaths hit even harder the more that the walk just keeps like going on. Not to mention Mark Hamill is like such a great like smug jerk as like the major, that like you feel like the rage that a lot of these boys start having for this guy. And especially like I love how just like this is a villain who kind of like basks in all the control he has, like, because he looks at this entire walk not as like a fair competition, but as a way to like build up manliness and spirit. Because like at one point, like the boys are just like screaming back at him, like telling him just like, shut up, we don't want to hear all your declarations about how this is for the good of the nation or how this is going to make you more of a man. And all he can do is just laugh at that. He's just like, yes, this is what I want you to be angry and frustrated because I want you to be dumb. I just want you to just focus on getting to the finish line and don't question any other aspects in this world. Just center everything on me right now and concentrate on winning, because don't you want to win? Don't you want all the money? And the ending, like, I'm not going to reveal it here for anyone who is worried about the spoilers, but by the time it gets up to the ending, I love the way how it ends on this very satisfying note, because like throughout the walk, there's this question about whether or not to, use that one wish you have to either do good in the world, try to find like some ways to improve it, or just to seek out like bloody revenge, and trying to like realize what matters the more you go in life. And ultimately what it comes down to is just like the personal attachments that drive us forward, and you know, to institute like the mark that we want left on the world. And I think by the end it does that, but like in a very in like a very like darkly poignant way that doesn't end the film on much of like a high note where you truly believe like this could be the final walk. You don't know if it is, but you do know that it does leave a lasting impression, and if nothing else, just like a, you know, some level of like accomplishment that goes beyond just, you know, getting through the walk and trying to like find some way to fight back with it. So, you know, for being, I'll be honest, I've never read the novel, but this feels like I kind of do want to read the book now if it's as intense as this film was, because you never get used to it. You never get used to like the brutality. You never stop feeling for these characters. Not to mention a lot of like the unexpected twists and how like some of these characters die. Like you think you know how some of these characters might go, and then it shocks you, because like, you know, we're not all like the same people the more that we go through life. You know, goals change, personalities change, our outlook on life becomes so much different that it shocks us to see, you know, what we end up becoming. And I think this film is basically kind of like a coming of age film, but in like kind of like the worst way, where you watch these boys grow up way too fast and realize just how horrible a world that they have grown up in. And just the performances from everyone here, including like Judy Greer as Raymond's mother. She's not on screen too much, but the few times she is, you see that kind of desperation in her face of just realizing, I've brought my kid up into this hideous world. What have I done? What am I going to do? And just feeling that level of hopelessness. She's more or less the audience, just like standing back watching in like despair, and just, you know, being very tearful about who doesn't make it across the finish line here. So yeah, The Long Walk, it's so got under my skin and just rattled me. And I think that's what you want out of a horror film. You don't want to get used to the kills. You don't want to just look at it straight as a game. You want to see it as, you know, making a statement about this dystopian world that allowed for, you know, young men to be gunned down in the name of like, you know, preserving the workforce or some other stupid logic that comes with fascists wanting to take away everything in life. So yeah, this was a very poignant film. I think is perfectly suited for this year. So yeah, I absolutely love this film, but it's not a fun film. It'll rattle you, especially even if you are used to a lot of dystopian horror films. This one rattled me. So yeah, The Long Walk is a brilliant, anxiety-inducing horror film. So The Long Walk is going to be playing in theaters this weekend. Okay. I just realized I'm gonna have to put a little box over the title there, because I just realized that that I wrote The Last Walk. Oh god. See, this is what happens when I do stuff like last minute like that, you know. Oh boy. Well, I'll fix it in post. That's what I get for starting late and doing a Streamlabs update. All right. Well, let's get to the next one here. Yeah. It's okay, Tony. If I screw up like that, feel free to mention it in chat. Okay. Now, for those of you wondering, don't worry. I did not screw up this title. This is the way that it's spelled. I double checked. But yeah, it is The Last Walk. It might have been, but no. Oh boy. All right. let's come back from this train wreck so far. Okay. Is it me, or does YMS become too jaded and bitter to listen to? I honestly, I haven't listened to YMS in like 4 years, I think. Last time I did, like, it's what was it? I think it was like the Pinocchio thing just bothered me. The way that he said that, like, films from the 1940s were terribly written. And it's like, dude, you just pissed off everybody who watches Turner Classic Movies. Just all of them. Not to mention, like, the stupid stuff he said. Like, you got. I think one thing that really pissed me off was when he got really mad at, what was it, Captain Marvel, because she was able to send a message through space with through a payphone. It's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Like, man, are you pissed off at that scene in E.T. where he contacted his homeworld with a speak and spell? It's like, oh my goodness, come on, man. These are pre-recorded. No, they're entirely live. I do that. I do that live so I can make great little mistakes like those. Also, so I can answer any questions about the reviews in between there, because sometimes people got some questions about some of the stuff we cover. So, all right. Actually, I'm actually gonna move this mouse here. So there we go. That's much better here. Sorry, I'm clearing space below me here. Okay, here we go with Spike Lee's newest film. Clear my throat here. All right. Here we go with Highest to Lowest. See what you have to say about new stuff. Oh, thank you. Well, there's plenty of new stuff. Like, I'll be honest. Like, right now, I'm kind of like falling behind on most of the films. I don't usually get out to the theater. Like, there's like some certain conflicts, but once we get to award season, it's tons of new movies. I'm going to be talking about stuff that's not going to be coming out till like January, if that. Like, or some, depending on when these films get picked up. Like, some of them don't even come out till like the next season. Because I think one year I reviewed this little animated film called Robot Dreams, which we got a nice little screener for, but I don't think it got released until like 6 months later. So yeah, a lot of early stuff we'll be talking about. So yeah, let's without further ado, let's get to Highest to Lowest here in 3, 2, 1. So Spike Lee's Highest to Lowest is a remake of the Akira Kurosawa film High and Low. Now, I was a little bit hesitant about this film because I know that some people have problems when Spike Lee adapts stuff like Old Boy, which, wasn't that great of a remake. But I had a little bit more confidence in something like this because for those who haven't seen High and Low, it's honestly like right next to Ikaru. I think it's one of Kurosawa's best non-samurai films. What it is it's essentially a crime thriller about, someone trying to negotiate for someone's son with money and then, making the drop for the money and then eventually catching the culprit and realizing how greed and money motivated this whole kidnapping scenario. Highest to Lowest follows some of like the same format, but it's a much different film in terms of tone, in terms of theme, and just the way that it's very much like a Spike Lee film instead of just being like an American adaptation of High and Low. And part of what makes it more distinct, I think, first off, is that you have Denzel Washington playing the lead here, of David King, who is a music mogul who specializes in trying to find top talent, but he's trying right now to do his best to reattain the ownership of his company so that AI doesn't take over. But it's not going as well. He's trying to like scrape together as much money as he can, and it seems like things are just starting to work out for him. And what I love so much about Washington's performance is that he has this this confidence that just naturally exudes from him. Like at one point, he's trying to negotiate to let someone allow him to buy up the remaining shares he needs for majority control. And he has such a way with trying to convince people that at one point, he just lets a bunch of pregnant pauses linger in the air. And he's just like, come on, you know you want to give it to me. You know you do. And he just lets it linger in the air there. And you just feel like he's kind of won in that moment. And you're just like watching him just kind of like dance around how much he can negotiate so well. But of course, then his negotiations are put to the ultimate test when his son Trey is kidnapped by an aspiring rapper called Young Felon, played by A$AP Rocky. And this is where, like, David starts revealing just how much like money plays a key role in his world. Because initially he does manage to get the money that he needs for, buying up his company, but then the rapper who has kidnapped his son says, you got to give me that money. And at first he thinks, okay, well, it's my son. I guess I got to give up the money. But then he gets his son back, and then he has to end up negotiating instead for the son of his friend played by Jeffrey Wright in the film. And then it becomes a bigger question of, do I really want to give up this money? And the fact that David even has to think about it is immediately of offense to Jeffrey Wright's character of Paul. And they have like a pretty good dynamic that when you see like this money drive them apart, it becomes, a key aspect of like defining David's character about, giving him a chance to decide what matters most in life, his family and friends, or money and ownership of his own music company. And it's a battle that you feel that his character can win this battle if he just, if he determines what is most important in life and comes to the realization. There are a few moments where he is much more colder about this whole ordeal. Like there's one exchange he has with Trey that is just, it's deeply chilling the way that just David kind of like asserts himself and it says, look, I'm the man of the house and I get to decide what happens with the money. This isn't up to you, it's up to me. And Trey's just like, this is a really selfish side of you. And it's not quite as, I guess I should stress this, it's not as vicious as like Denzel's performance in something like Fences, where he was very like gritty and very like, just mean and all that. This type of character is a little less mean. He's still a bit cruel and cold-hearted, but he's also a very slick negotiator. And I think what helps with this film establish its certain tone is the way that Spike Lee infuses music into this film in a way that's kind of like juxtaposed, because there's hip hop, there's jazz, there's Latin American music, and it's all placed on top of scenes of chases and gunfighting and bitter disputes, that it kind of creates this little bit of an offbeat tone that kind of reminded me of a 1990s thriller. Like it wouldn't surprise me if this had been an idea that Spike Lee wanted to do in the 90s. Like he wanted to make this type of crime thriller, because it does have that kind of note of feeling it feels like a lot of like thrillers I remember from like the 1990s. And just the performances are so great here, because Denzel Washington, the moment that he's trying to negotiate for his kid with Young Felon, played by A$AP Rocky, Denzel has such a natural presence in this film. The way he's able to like crack jokes in between talking to Young Felon is just so great, just because A$AP Rocky is putting on a very intimidating performance here about just like calling out David, saying like, look, I'm calling the shots. I'm tired of you always being in control. I don't like that you're in control. I want to take this situation. I'm going to take this hostage. You're going to do what I want. You're going to give me what I want. If I want more, you're going to give it to me. That's how it's going to work. And David's character, David King, is very much like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll play this game with you, but I'm gonna make it on my own terms. I'm gonna do it because I want to, not because you're making me. Now, there are a few familiar scenes that are reflected from Kurosawa's High and Low. There is, for instance, the handoff with the train, although it proceeds much differently and with a far different tone, especially. When I said, like, the film juxtaposed music, it's because the big sequence where he drops the money from the train is on a subway that's passing right through this Puerto Rican festival. And at this Puerto Rican festival, there's this eccentric party music going the whole time, while David's just looking around for where to drop the money, and the cops are keeping an eye on it and trying to figure out where the money's going, trying to track down the culprit. And all the while, there's this very eccentric, music going on in the background. And it's actually the music is played by Eddie Palmieri, who is a pretty accomplished pianist, and I think there's a great shot in the film that perfectly defines Spike Lee's style, because there's a moment where Eddie is playing the piano and he's just having such a ball with it that at one point he just starts playing with his elbows, and it doesn't seem to like throw anyone off key. It doesn't seem to bother the audience. It's kind of wild, and it seems to kind of work, and that's very much how Spike Lee's film is here. It takes a few wild swings with how it sets up a lot of these scenes. And while I don't feel like most of them work, especially the scenes that kind of try to have like a little bit like of an offbeat nature, especially for like the opening sequence, man, you would not believe me if I told you what piece of music they use in the opening scenes of this film that are mostly just external shots of New York City. You would not believe me. But I do appreciate the way that Spike Lee is just, the way that he has like a lot of like pillow shots that, like Ozu would perfect, that he showcases the environment. He tries to make New York City feel alive, and it very much does. Like there's a lot of talk about basketball teams and, going by Yankee Stadium and whipping up fans, and just the music in the streets and the way that all these New Yorkers interact with each other. It's a film that's very much alive. Like High and Low was very much an intense film for how it zeroed in on like the drama and the intensity of whether or not, they were going to be able to rescue this kid. Highest to Lowest feels like a film that's just kind of like basking in the New York atmosphere and just trying to use all the colors on the palette to paint this very vivid portrait of a thriller. Now, the one scene that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be questioning with this film is the moment where eventually young Felon is locked up and David has to confront the culprit. This scene happened in High and Low, and it's one of the best scenes in the film. It's the very last scene, and it's the scene of the culprit basically realizing what he's done, how he's kind of like doomed his life, and just slowly coming to this bitter realization that his world is coming to an end. And just realizing, I didn't want this to happen, and then just breaking down mentally as kind of like the literal cage closes in around him. And that type of scene is in Highest to Lowest, but it's approached much differently. Like, for starters, right before the scene happens, there's a little bit of a music video sequence in which both like Denzel Washington and A$AP Rocky are facing each other and kind of meeting each other on like the same ground of how they view their life specifically as like music and business. And their meeting, when they both meet face to face with like the glass separating them, it's less about like the criminal and more about David realizing that he's kind of got to turn away from the world of greed. So it's kind of like his rejection of the devil rather than watching like a criminal disintegrate. It's basically, recognizing that not all money is good money. In fact, that kind of becomes his motto as the film goes along, that, you don't have to accept every business deal that comes your way, and that not all attention is good attention. Sometimes you have to take control of your life and realize what matters most. So it's the same setup for the type of scene, but a much different tone and a much different theme that Spike Lee injects into it. And I think that's what I love so much about Highest to Lowest, is that it doesn't feel like a direct adaptation of High and Low, which is great. If you have a remake, especially of like a Kurosawa film, and you look at his other films like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, you want to put your own mark on that. a lot of people don't see the Magnificent Seven as an adaptation so much of the Seven Samurai. It feels like a different type of Western in its own right. Same goes with, adapting Yojimbo into A Fistful of Dollars. You need to bring something more than just doing like a straight adaptation. Because like a remake that's just like shot for shot and verbatim the same lines, it's not fun, it's not interesting, and it doesn't really say anything about the director other than their ability to replicate. And I have no doubt that Spike could pull off like a Gus Van Sant type situation and make like make like the same version of like Psycho, just repeat the same thing as High and Low. But I don't want that out of a film. I want to see some experimenting. And that's what's so impressive about what he does here. I don't think it always works. I think there are a few scenes where it does feel a bit off, and I do think some of the exchanges drag a little bit, and I do think probably the biggest problem with this film is that some of the thematic elements kind of get lost as the film goes along, and kind of gets lost in its theatrics, especially when you get to see Denzel fight back and chase down young Felon through like the streets of New York City. It feels like a much different film from High and Low. And not all those scenes work, but for the most part, I'm kind of impressed by the type of film that Spike Lee was able to wield with this material and not just give us the same thing over and over. So as an adaptation, I don't think this is Spike Lee's best film, but for attempting to adapt a Akira Kurosawa film, I think he does a pretty good job putting his own mark on this and making it feel like a much different film and a very vibrant film and a very alive film with a fantastic performance from Denzel Washington, which, Denzel's always pretty good, but I haven't seen a film where he takes full control and just dominates a film. Like, even when he was in Macbeth, I felt like he was the central role there, and I still didn't feel like we were getting all of Denzel in that role. Here, I do feel like Lee is bringing out a lot more of that natural charisma and that ability to control a room and seem intimidating all at once. So yeah, once again, Spike Lee knows how to direct someone like Denzel Washington and knows how to take familiar material and put his own mark on it. So yeah, for the most part, Highest to Lowest is a pretty damn good Spike Lee film for being adapted from a Kurosawa classic. So Highest to Lowest should be playing in a few theaters right now. But if you want to watch it at home, it's currently playing on Apple TV+. All right. Read through some of the chat here. Oh, shoot. Hang on. The chat kind of got cut off here. There we go. Let's see. Wolffield says, I don't keep up with movies as much as I'd like to, mostly due to financial reasons, but the backlog is eternally growing like a fungus. Oh, well, it'll always grow. I mean, the amount of movies we have coming out every month is absurd. Like, the amount of movies we get coming out every month now, like 30 years ago, that would have been all the films you've got all year. There's always something new coming out. It is impossible to keep up, but you try. Yeah, you try, and you listen to other people. Like, I read a whole bunch of different folks through their columns and watch reviews on YouTube to figure out what to see next. In addition to all the press releases and stuff that I get. So yeah, you will never have enough time to watch all the movies you want to, but you got to try, which is what I'm going to do this fall when I get, overwhelmed with about 100 movies that are thrown into my lap. But I will get through them. Scorn says, hey, how's it going? Going great. Good to see you again, Scorn. I found Meg 7's so unforgettable, I didn't even realize it was a remake of a pre-existing movie. Oh, The Magnificent Seven? Yeah. I think it might help if, like, for, like, the context. Like, there are a few scenes in Magnificent Seven that are pretty... Unless... Wait a minute. I think I should clarify here. Are you talking about the original Magnificent Seven, or do you mean the remake of the Western Americans, the remake of the Magnificent Seven that we got in 2016, which feels like the weirdest thing to say, because the remake of the Magnificent Seven, which itself is a remake of the Seven Samurai, so I mean, the Magnificent Seven's been remade in more ways than one. Like, it was remade with Battle Beyond the Stars, which was like a sci-fi version of it. There were two American versions? Yes, there are. There's not only two American versions, there's also a few sequels, and I believe there is a TV series of it. Oh, you saw the bad 2016. Yeah, the 2016 version is not as good as the original. That's what I was thinking. Because I was thinking, like, maybe some people might not be into the original film, but I was thinking, like, no, because the original's got some really cool scenes. Like, there's that great scene where Yul Brynner is with I think it was like Steve McQueen, and they're both in this carriage, and they're trying to get this this person buried up a hill, but a bunch of racists won't let them bury them up the hill, so they basically have to drive through town and gun down anybody who wants to shoot them up while they try to make their way to the cemetery. And it's just such a cool scene. There are so many great moments in that film. But yeah, like the 2016 version, it's by director Antoine Fuqua, who does like a lot of very intense action films, and he leans very much into it, and it's okay in terms of like just being like a brutal action film, but it does not have the same charisma as the original. And I think it's just because like everybody in the original Magnificent Seven, like Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, all these different actors were all throwing their all into it, and they're all magnificent. To find a better, they're all fantastic. Try to find a different word there. But yeah, like the 2016. I mean, I think this should kind of define it. It stars Chris Pratt, and it's Chris Pratt playing Chris Pratt. And I don't think he plays as well off the other characters. There's also the Hateful Eight. Yeah. Well, that's not a sequel, but I can understand if you thought it was, None of that, the bat, like, oh yeah. Magnificent Seven is one of the best Westerns out there. Like, right next to the Man with No Name trilogy. It's one of the must-watch Westerns. In addition to, like, I know a lot of people say, like, John Ford stuff, but honestly, aside from, like, Stagecoach and a few others, I think, like, most of... Not all of John Ford stuff kind of worked for me, and I think that's just because that was during, like, his Western saturation era, so... So, yeah, I didn't... More like a tropey trend. Let's see. How you doing? Space Shippoet. My favorite Western series is Briscoe County Jr. Well, it's hard not to fall a little bit in love with Briscoe County Jr. I mean, there's not too many Western shows out there, because I'm trying to think how many good ones are. Like, I haven't watched all of it, but I've watched a handful of episodes of the original Wanted, with McQueen, which is it's pretty good. It's pretty good. There's a few episodes I felt fell short, but for the most part, I kind of dug it. I mean, there's the obvious one to go with, which was Deadwood, which I love. I thought the third season kind of dragged a little bit, but I fell in love with the first two seasons. I should probably watch the movie at some point. I haven't gotten around to it. Let's see, an auxiliary trick says, popping in to say that as legendary Spike Lee is, my favorite thing he has done over the past decade is still his reaction to Green Book winning. Yes, if you have not seen Spike Lee's reaction to Green Book winning the Oscar for Best Picture, it's great because because they catch him at just the right time because he's in such a great mood. I mean, he did win an Oscar that night, so he was all excited. So they got him in just the right time. It's like, okay, can we get your thoughts on Green Book? And I believe his exact words were to the reporter was like, well, let me put it this way. Are you British? It's like, yes, British. Like, okay, let me put this into words you can understand. It wasn't my cup of tea. And then he just laughed and jumped around, and it was just like, yeah, that's my 2 cents. What do I care? I won an Oscar. And that's, I think more people should remember Black Klansman from that year than they should Green Book. So, yeah, like Lee's made quite a few quite a few good, like Black Klansman is an amazing film. I really loved Da Five Bloods, released about, it was like 5 years ago, I think. So yeah, not all of Spike Lee's films work as well as I think. Like I've got problems with his depictions in, what was that one? Mo Better Blues, and I have, I of course, like I didn't really like Old Boy. I have some issues with like his adaptation of Ganja and Hess. I felt like it was a bit too messy than it needed to be, and I thought Chirac was okay. I thought Chirac was a good idea. I like the way that he drew from myths and ancient fables to kind of like talk about a current issue. That was great. Not to mention you have Samuel L. Jackson doing narration in that film just beautifully. We don't talk about it so much. Yeah, that's kind of like the black eye of his filmography. We don't talk as much about. I'm very uncomfortable with Mo Better Blues, and I would much rather talk about that film than I would about his version of Old Boy, you know. So yeah, Spike Lee's still great though. I mean, that's why I put up in the background there. I put up Do the Right Thing. I rewatched Do the Right Thing last year when I was writing an essay on it, and it's an amazing film. If you have not seen it, go check it out. That's also why I put like high and low next to her. So you got Spike Lee and Kurosawa, right up there. I adore the first half of the Five Bloods, and I really like Black Klansman as well, of course. Yeah. Even if you have issues, like Spike Lee's filmmaking is still really interesting because he puts a lot of thought into both drawing from history and just playing around with filmmaking techniques. So he's always trying stuff. I'll put it this way, he's never a director that bores. There are films of his that I don't like, and I feel like he does miss a few times, especially within the last like decade or so. I felt like in the 2010s there were a lot more misses than hits from him. But even his misses are still pretty fascinating. To be frank, I don't think he wants to talk about it either. Probably not. I got the feeling that was probably like, you know, a messy thing that was kind of like rushed into production. I was just saying, you know, okay, Old Boy's hot and they got to adapt it somehow. I don't think anybody was, biting to make like a remake of Kurosawa's High and Low. I don't think, well, for one, there probably wasn't much demand, but also I think there was like a hesitancy for anyone to try to tackle it. So the fact that Lee actually came onto that project and gave it his own, I think is very admirable. I think a lot of audiences will probably go into it not even knowing that it's based on a previous film. My issue with The Five Bloods is that I love the legitimate trauma and emotional exploration of the film's first half. The second half just delved more into action and didn't quite land for me. I think, yeah, that's the thing I think that might turn people off about that film, is that when it's about like these men coming home to kind of like find some closure to the war, they end up back in the war itself, and it does kind of turn into an action film at that point, but it does become like, you know, action with meaning. I think, and I get the feeling it's almost kind of like Spike's pensiveness about what he can do with that material when like the characters are in the jungle, because he always finds something to do with the characters, but I get the feeling that there was only one route to go after everything that you've established with those characters. So it's a little bit frustrating, but, you know, a little bit understandable too for the route that he wanted to go there. I will say this, the action scenes are actually pretty damn good for how they're set up. Let's see, Wolf Beale says he seems so unenthused to be working on it in the behind the scenes. Yeah, I've seen that footage. It's I don't blame him. Yeah, it's just, we'll pretend that didn't happen. At least he just called it Old Boy, so that no one's gonna be like, oh, what was this one called? It's like, oh, that was my remake of Old Boy. It's like, oh, okay. Which is why I'm glad that Highest to Lowest didn't end up being terrible, because then someone might ask like, oh, why was it bad? It's like, oh, well, it was Spike Lee trying to do a Kurosawa film. It's like, wait, is he trying to do high and low? Yeah, he was. Oh, okay. Was no way to meaning for sure. Was a unique choice. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's definitely a bit of a tonal shift. Little bit of a surprise, but I mean, Spike's film's always going to have a little bit of a shock in there somewhere. Let's see, what was the last one? All right. Friendship. Okay. Let me see if I can get through this last one here. Whoops. And there we go. Okay. All right, let me get my notes up here and we will talk about friendship. Yes. Let us get to covering another movie. All right, here we go. With friendship in 3, 2, 1. So, Friendship is a film starring Tim Robinson of I Think You Should Leave Now, and it very much plays like, and I think I should, it very much plays like Tim Robbins' sketch show of finding kind of like awkward moments and existential dread and drawing from them the way that he would in that sketch show. This film basically feels like one of those sketches blown up into a long form. Which basically like lingers on that awkwardness, and especially, and I love the fact that we stick with that, you know, that uncertainty and that dread, that you're conflicted about whether or not to laugh or cry at what goes down in this film. Especially, it feels like you have to do both at the same time for the deeply uncomfortable topic that it tries to address here, which is how like adult men make friends when they grow older, and how tough it is to do that right now. And what I love so much about the way that writer-director Andrew DeYoung frames this film is that he doesn't place it on any one culprit, one specific thing to blame, and it doesn't try to like kind of like radicalize Tim Robinson's character of Craig to like go over the edge. Like Craig is very much one of like those odd guys who really just can't find the right social cues to pick up on and how to read people. And he feels like he's losing touch with his family, the way that his wife, played by Kate Mara, has just recovered from a cancer diagnosis, and he's all happy for her, but he can feel that she's drifting more apart from him, the way that she's kind of obsessing over another man, and that she's more focused on her work, and how she wants more things out of life that Craig just can't give her. And then you have his son of Steven, played by Jacqueline Grazer, who's just kind of just drifting apart the way that most teenagers do, where it kind of feels like, in a few years, he's just going to be gone and kind of like forgotten about his dad. So it feels like Craig needs someone in his life to help him out, and that comes in the form of his neighbor Austin, played by Paul Rudd. And Austin is just more than welcoming of Craig to be his new friend. Like, he comes over for beers, and immediately Austin is, talking about his job as being like a local weatherman, and Craig is impressed. And then Austin's like, well, if you think that's cool, check this out. And then he starts showing him like these like cool ancient artifacts, and then they go out hunting for mushrooms, and they go on this little adventure through the sewers. And then, Austin shows off that he's in a band and that he's really engaged with politics, and Craig is just like, this is really cool. And it puts like that little extra bounce in his step and makes him feel a lot more alive. But of course, the problem is that Craig is not great at maintaining friendships, because he can't read a social cue, and one night out with the boys ends up going a little bit wrong, and he just ends up being cut off from that friendship. And so just as easily as Craig is able to make this friend, that friend is out of his life again, and it's something that he just can't deal with and can't understand. So the rest of the film is mostly just Tim Robinson's character trying to figure out where to go next in his life and how best to to make friends or try to find something worthwhile or something to maintain. And it drives him nuts. Not just for not being able to form like another male friendship, but also just not being able to understand himself. And this is where I say it makes you want to like laugh and cry, because it's got all like the, the funny Tim Robinson mannerisms, but, extolled in a way that is just, is a relatable sense of anxiety. So you're laughing and just dreading the film at the same time, because you're laughing is like, look how funny Tim is. And at the same time, you're like, God, I know that's me. I know that if I make one mistake, that's going to be the problem. That's going to be what gets me cut off from my friends. That's what's going to make me into such a weirdo. That's what's going to make me further insulated and uncertain and insecure with my life. And it's just, you feel bad for him, but you also kind of want to laugh at his inability not to read so much of what's going on here. Because at one point, Craig has this drug-induced vision where he's hoping to find some meaning in his life through essentially licking a toad. And the vision that he gets is one of it's so absurd I almost don't want to mention here, but it's basically just Craig meeting Austin at a restaurant and ordering a sandwich. And that's all it is. And he kind of thinks like, oh, that's stupid. What was that? All I got was a sandwich, and just, the same Tim Robinson mannerisms. But it kind of does speak to what a lot of men just want most, which is just, a comfort, And I think I kind of get that, because, if you go into order a sandwich, there might be a little bit of like a chummy nature there, but it's mostly just a transaction. Like, where that conversation is going, how it's set up, what you want out of it, and how it's going to end, and you have like a little bit of connection along the way. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of men just want and aren't quite sure how to get it. Even when it's presented quite overtly here to Craig, he's still like, I don't even know what that was about. And you want to laugh because like he doesn't get it, and also cry because he might never get it. But he does. I think there is more of a connection that he forms with Austin when he recognizes the vulnerability. The one thing that I think a lot of men have that problem showing each other that doesn't come out the way that you want it to, because they establish Austin as having this friends group of guys who are very open with talking about family stuff and expressing themselves to each other, but there's still something that Austin covers up here that only Craig knows about, and that only Craig can even help cover up at one point, where it's mostly just, ultimately what a lot of men want is just to be there for each other, and when they're at their most vulnerable, be there to protect them, and not to just, point out their flaws and laugh at each other and just stick up for them when they need it most. And the way that it comes about in the most chaotic way here, which ends up with this big climax of Tim Robinson waving around a gun and trying to, and busting his car over speed bumps and stuff like, and just screaming at people. It just spirals into chaos, but at the same time it kind of loops back around to like what most men desire, without making it so simplistic or just focusing on the aspects of toxic masculinity that a lot of men could fall into with that type of mindset. And I love the way that it tries to find like the funny moments that almost like organically pop up here. Like, there's like a little bit of a joke here I think that can be made about Connor O'Malley's character, who just like comes in to insult Tim Robinson in one scene. Like, he's a friend of his wife's, and he just stumbles in there as like an average guy, and then just immediately gets into an argument and starts yelling at Tim, which, if you're familiar with Connor O'Malley, he's been in a few films. He's been in like I Saw the TV Glow, and he was on the Joe Pera Talks to You. He's basically one of those like those actors who are known for exploding with anger, and he just comes in here just like almost kind of like protruding here. I love the fact that it almost feels like it's an obligation that Connor O'Malley has to show up in an A24 film. That it's almost like a cameo, because even Tim Robinson's character is like, "Who are you? I don't know who you are." And Connor O'Malley's just like, well, I'm supposed to be here to yell at people and get really angry and in their face and just make this comedy more maniacal and loud. And he does a great job of that. And this film, it does actually really go to some fairly dark places here, on a very deep psychological level. And I think just finding the weird humor in that makes it, it gives it some levity. It allows you to both laugh and cry at this very relatable aspect of, like, adult men trying and failing to understand their problems and address them and connect with other men who feel the same way and are just having such a struggle just trying to, like, break down that wall, that it feels like you're almost kind of like hoping that something else will bust it down so that, the person on the other side can see just how flawed you are and how much you need them and that you want them in your life. That just, you want to cry, but you kind of gotta laugh because that's the only way to, like, make it bearable. So it's very much like an emotional roller coaster of a film. It's very anxiety inducing. It does have a lot of the awkwardness that comes with the "I think you should leave now" sketches blown up into a long form film that I feel like explores something much deeper and much more concerning beyond just, like, men, listening to, like, Joe Rogan or getting on some stupid diet or listening to all the toxic, just falling into that pit of toxic masculinity. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can just be something as simple as just, feeling that isolation and that longing to get closer to someone and reveal your fragility rather than just put up that wall again. These are, especially with, like, Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson, these are clearly guys who do want to connect and do have fears of opening themselves up to one another for not wanting to be hurt. And it's tragic that by the time it gets to the end of that film, after all the chaos, the fact that there is just a little bit more of a connection between the two is surprisingly rather sweet and weird and hilarious at the same time. So yeah, this film is a lot, but I think I love the way that it explores this topic in a very nuanced and amusing way. So if you love the awkwardness of the "I think you should leave now" sketches, you need to see Friendship, because it takes a lot of the ethos of that show and explores it in a much more like psychological and darker tone while still being amusing at the same time. So yeah, for everything that it showcases here, I loved the hell out of Friendship. So Friendship is currently playing on Max. It's HBO Max right now. That's right. Let's see. From the chat here, Wolf says, really excited to check out Highest to Lowest at some point. Yep. It's on Apple TV Plus, so whenever you get around to it, that's where to find it. You can watch it this weekend if you want. See, Wolfio said, yeah, that's why I was caught off guard hearing he's doing another adaptation of the Asian classic. Yeah. See, Wolfia, unfortunately, you mentioned A$AP Rocky earlier, so I'm now listening to some old faves, but cool to know that he also did a really good original song for the movie, too. Yeah. Actually, there was another thing I was going to not divulge here, but, like, the epilogue of Highest to Lowest is, like, it's a musical epilogue, unlike High to Low, that features this character called Shula. No, it's a Sula. Sula C Song, I think, is her name, and I think she's like a fairly young artist who sings like the closing song of Highest to Lowest, and it's a really good song to go out on. There's a lot of great music in this film, especially from singers and musicians who appear in that film. So yeah, it's if you love like different, not even just like hip hop and rap, like there is some in the film, but just music in general, I think you'll love it. Like there's some classic hits, there's some there's like a little bit of gospel, there's a little bit of everything there, a little bit of Puerto Rican music, a little bit of everything. So yeah, all right, where was I? Oh yes, recapping the films I reviewed. So yes, the films I reviewed today were the Long Walk, the adaptation of the Stephen King novel. It is anxiety-inducing, hard, brutal, excellent film. Really had me just gripping my seat. Every kill is brutal. The world is beautifully revealed as a dystopian nightmare through this film. I cannot stop thinking about this film. God, it was so good. The Long Walk, currently playing in theaters. I also reviewed Highest to Lowest, the adaptation of Spike Lee's adaptation of the Akira Kurosawa film High and Low. It's not on the same level of the thriller mastery that was Kurosawa's film, but it's definitely a fun film, and it does have Spike Lee's distinct mark on it, and it doesn't feel like a verbatim remake, so it's definitely a good film. And then I reviewed Friendship, starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd, which delved deeper into the psychological drama and damage that men try to face while they try to form friendships in adulthood and try to navigate that nightmare. And it is funny, hilarious, and tragic all at the same time. Wonderful film. So all three films, pretty damn good, but I think I can safely say the one film that I love the most among all these was The Long Walk, which is going to be in theaters this weekend. So be sure to go out and check it out this weekend. But if you're staying in, the other two films I recommended are available right now. Highest to Lowest is currently streaming on Apple TV Plus, and Friendship is currently streaming on HBO Max. So I will have those reviews up, and I'll have to edit the last walk out of my video footage. But I have those reviews up either tomorrow or later this weekend in video format. You can also read reviews of these. You can also read my review of these movies on my website at movieswithmark.com. So, if you like the reviews that we did here today, be sure to like it so that other people know to go check out The Long Walk this weekend. But also, be sure, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure that you go and subscribe, because we're going to be covering a lot more films come award season here. It's going to be a busy time. So, I know I usually do 3 reviews, but I'm actually going to be doing more like 5 or 6 the further that we get into fall, because there's a lot of ground to cover. So, what have we got coming up next week? Well, we're going to be reviewing, well, actually, not next week. I got to give it 2 weeks so we have more room to cover. But in 2 weeks, I'll be covering the latest thriller called Him, which is about a football star who, I think something goes wrong. It definitely looks like a horror film, considering it comes from Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw Productions. So we'll see just how weird it gets. And I'll also be reviewing the latest Paul Thomas Anderson film, One Battle at a Time, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, which I have heard nothing but good things about, which is great news to hear about a Paul Thomas Anderson film. So we'll see if he can deliver that again. So be sure to check back in 2 weeks when we review those 2 films, as well as a third. I'm not sure which. I think it might be Twinless. I've been meaning to talk about this film for a bit, and I don't think I've quite gathered all my thoughts. So I will try to talk about Twinless when we get to that in about 2 weeks. So be sure to like and subscribe for more movie reviews, more video essays. I am working on some more. I am working on the video essay for Shadiversity, but that one I might have to trim that one. That one has gotten out of control. That one is currently at 24 pages, and I'm not even done with it yet. It is, and I don't know if I want to make it that long. I don't, like, for reference, the PragerU video I did, that was about like 17 pages long. So you can imagine how much longer this one is going to be. So I'm debating how I'm going to go with that. But if you want to stay up to date on my other writing, you can support me on Patreon, where you can get access to my movie history books, including the one I'm writing currently about banned movies from around the world. I'm updating it with entries as I finish them. And once they're all finished, all the patrons who have signed up for either the $3 or $15 tier will get a copy of the book. $3 patrons will get a digital PDF copy that they can read on their computer, and the $15 patrons will get the digital copy and a physical copy that I will send directly to you. So, I will be back in about 2 weeks with more movie reviews, and might have a video essay release, possibly, depending if I can finish my latest script. I'll see. And if I don't, I do have some other scripts in the backlog that I can go to. Like the PragerU one I actually did have in the backlog for a while there. So there might be an additional video essay in between. You won't know. You'll just have to wait and see. So, check back in 2 weeks. And until next time, have a good one, everybody. Go out and see the long walk this weekend. All right. Have a great Mega Force weekend, everybody.